So the first topic in Module 7, it is all about the secularization controversy. So guys, diri nga topic is diri ta na di mabalaan ang conflict between secular priest and regular priest. The two types of priests serve the Catholic Church in the Philippines. The first one is regulars and the second one is seculars. Regular priests, they belong to a religious orders and their missions is to spread Christianity. And guys, amo pagin ni ang isa ka rason kung halos tanan balang Pinoy is Katoliko ang religion. The example of regulars priest, the first one is Franciscans, Recollects, Dominicans, and Augustinians. While the secular naman niya is they do not belong to religious orders. Hindi sila belong sa religious orders like why sila spread Christianity, and their missions is to run the parishes under the supervision of bishop. Like ang seculars is under sila sa bishops ng mga orders.
Amo ni ang tsura sang regular priest sang una. Sila di kuno ang mga Spaniard or Espanyol nga mga pare. And while the secular priest naman niya is amo naman niya ang mga native Filipino nga mga pare.
So the conflict started because the bishops wanted to inspect the managements of the priests that were being operated by regular priests, as they believe it was their responsible to do so. However, the regular priest declined these visits, claiming that they were not within the bishop's authority.
Basilio Santa Hosta, it is one of our archbishop in Manila in 1774. Basilio Santa Hosta decided to uphold the diocese authority over the parish and accepted the resignation of the regular priest in 1774. And also he assigned secular priests, which is the native Filipinos, to take their place since there were not enough seculars to fill all the vacancies. The Archbishop hasted the ordination of Filipino seculars.
On November 9, 1774, a royal order was also issued that stipulated advocating the transfer of parochial management from regular friars or the secularization of all parishes to the secular clergy. The move angered the regulars since they believed the Filipino were unfit for a priest office. They noted the Filipinos lack color, lack of education, and other factors among other lack background. As the Jesus arrived back in the Philippines, the debate heated up. There was being forced to leave the nation as a result of some measures taken by the Spanish government, not at all. The topic quickly developed a racial clan. It was obvious that the Spaniard preferred the regular over the priest of the Philippines. The church ecclesiastical governor Monsignor Pedro Pelaez supported the Filipino people. Sadly, he perished in the 1863 earthquake that leveled the Manila Cathedral. Several priests continued to battle for the secularization movement in the place after he passed away. One of them, Priest Jacinto Zamora, Jose Burgos, and Mariano Gomez were present.
The Cavite Mutiny of 1872 has two versions, a Spanish version and the Filipino version. The mutiny was quickly crushed, but the reactionary governor, Rafael D. Izquierdos, a Spanish government, did not stop. Instead, he created a case and used it to fight off Filipinos and demand for government reforms. Some Filipinos get arrested and charged with planning among the rebels. Jose Burgos, Jacinto Zamora, and Mariano Gomez were publicly killed after a short trial. The three were killed for the sake of the Philippine independence. The first event that happened was the Cavite Mutiny in 1872, and the second was the martyrdom of three priests. However, not everyone was informed that there had been various accounts of the same events. Locals should know and understand the various views of the story because this case gave another terrible yet meaningful part of our history. The execution of Gomborza, which was a major factor in the revival of nationalism of Filipinos. The Gomborza were killed by the Spanish government because there was implicated and made them sentenced to death by Garate. It shows that no reform is possible, which is why the Spanish government killed priests. Spanish leaders who are claimed to be above and beyond this revolution were killed in the past generations. Until now, some Filipinos viewed Spain and the Spanish as oppressive, abusive, and arrogant. The Gomborza died after fighting for the equality of priests and leading a campaign against the Spanish. They discussed the consequences of secularization in the Philippines, which ended in a conflict between religious and church secularization.
The Spanish version of the 1872 Cavite Mutiny is written by Jose Montero Vedel, Spanish historian. He was ordered to overthrow the Spanish government within the Philippines. His description of the mutiny was generally criticized for being grossly biased. Rafael Izquierdo took the power of the government, the freedom to provide the privilege enjoyed by Cavite arsenal workers, has triggered a rebellion. The highlights of the revolution was the exclusion of privilege enjoyed by the Cavite employees, such as freedom of paying tribute and employment. The presence of local clergy worked with the rebels to help them fight the presence of the Spanish fur. So Jose Montero Vedel's description of 1872 Cavite Mutiny was criticized for being biased. Rafael Izquierdo took the power of the government, leading to rebellion against the Spanish fur. Local clergy workers with rebels to fight the Spanish furriers. As Dr. Trinidad H. Pardo de Tavera stated in the Filipino version of Cavite Mutiny of 1872, it was a simply mutiny of local Filipino and soldier and laborers of the Cavite arsenal towards the cruel policy of oppressive governor and Captain General Rafael del Escudero. Was destroy their old-time privilege of exemption from paying annual tribute and from working force labor. Polo, Filipinos had high hopes for an improvement in their country's situation. The lack of privilege which the soldier and laborer resented was the first explanation for the revolt. So the Cavite Mutiny of 1872 was a revolt against Escudero. So the Cavite Mutiny of 1872 was a revolt against Del Escuerdo's policy of destroying Filipino soldiers and laborers, old-time privilege which is they resented. Oppression and discontent with the government spread throughout the country. General Izquierdo stated undeniably that no changes would be made to the government which he aimed to manipulate the people with a cross in one hand and a sword in the other. So, General Izquierdo aimed to manipulate the people with a cross and a sword, leading to widespread discontent.
So, there we have here the 1872 Cavite Mutiny in the Spanish perspective. The Cavite Mutiny, or ang tinatawag nating pag-aakla sa Cavite, was an uprising of Filipino military personnel of Fort San Felipe. The Spanish arsenal in Cavite on January 20, 1872, around 200 locally recruited colonial troops and laborers rose up in the belief that it would elevate to a national uprising. The mutiny was unsuccessful, and government soldiers executed many of the participants and began to crack down on the burgeoning Philippines nationalist movement. Many scholars believe that the Cavite Mutiny was the beginning of Filipino nationalism that would eventually lead to the Philippine Revolution of 1896. So, ano ang mga kadahilanan nga nagkaroon ng pag-aalsa sa Cavite? So, ang layuning dahilan ay ang mga katutubong Pilipino ay gusto nila kakson ang pamalaang Espanyol sa Pilipinas. Dahilan dahil due to no freedom, wala benepisyo sa pag-eskwela, labor force, nang gabayad sila sa mga mataas na buwis at tinuturang ang mga Pilipino noon ay isang Indio na walang karapatan at kakayahan sa lahat. Though same bala sa novel ni Rizal no sa Noli kag sa El Fili no may ara to di ba mga characters nga mga Indio. So ang mga Indio sila na ang mga lower class nga mga tawo kung sa ila pa sila na ang mga nang mahihirap na walang kakayahan na though amo na ang turing sa ila. So pagkatapos ng Cavite Mutiny ay hindi naging successful. Why? Kaya due to the firework display, amo ni ang naging dahilan nga maging signal nga nag-start ang rebellion. In that, ang Espanyol ay natuligsa ang mga kasamahan nga tumakwil sa batas. Amo to sila ang mga Indios, no? Nga ang mga tawo, nga mga Pilipino nga nag-ubra sang grupo nga mag-akla sila. In that, sa panghitabo ato na gipandakop sila sa mga malaang Espanyol kag do kalabanan gid sila is amo na gin parusahan gin patay kag isa na da ang mga tao nga mga wala bala sala isa na da ang tatlo ka pare nga ginatawag naton nga gumborza. So who's the person behind of the documentaries ang 1872 Cavite Mutiny? So there we have here Jose Montero y Vidal, a prolific Spanish historian, documented the event and highlighted it as an attempt of the Indios to overthrow the Spanish government in the Philippines. And also there we have here Governor General Rafael Liquerdo's official report magnified the event and made use of it to implicate the native religious groups, which was then active in the call for reformation. The two accounts complemented and corroborated with one another only that the general's report was more spiteful. Cavite Mutiny is the main reason of the execution of three priests, which known in the name Gomborza. So who is Gomborza? It refers to the three Filipino Catholic priests, Mariano Gomez, Jose Burgos, and Jacinto Zamora, who were executed by Garrote on February 17, 1872 in Bagumbayan, Philippines, by Spanish colonial authorities on charges of subversion arising from the 1872 Cavite Mutiny. The name is a portmanteau of the priests' surnames. So number 1, there we have here Mariano Gomez de Los Angeles, was a well-known Roman Catholic priest during their time. Gomez was the child of Alejandro Francisco Gomez and Martina Custodia. He was born in the suburb of Santa Cruz, Manila on August 2, 1799. He was a tornatras, one born from mixed native Filipino, Chinese, and Spanish ancestors. He studied at the Colegio de San Juan de Latrian and later studied theology at the University of Santo Tomas, preparing himself for the priesthood in the Seminary of Manila. He was also active in the publication of the newspaper La Verdad, or in the English, The Truth. On February 17, 1872, he was one of the priests executed due to the false accusation of treason and sedition, taking a supposed active role in the Cavite Mutiny. So, si Mariano Gomez de Los Angeles, is may na obra siya nga libro, which is the title is La Verdad. So kung i-translate siya through English, ang title is The Truth. So ang unod na sang libro is about sa mga panghitabo, ang mga gakalatabo within sa iya nga palibot, which is in the Philippines. Ang mga gakalatabo nga a time nga mga truthfulness nga gakalatabo sa time sang Spanish, no? So it was amo to ang naging dahilan nga naging ebidensya sang mga Espanyol nga dakpon sa amoy ito nga libro nga ginobra. So the second one is Jose Apolonio Burgos y Garcia. Was born in Vegan, Ilocos Sur on February 9, 1837. His parents were Jose Burgos, a Spanish lieutenant in the Spanish militia of Ilocos, and Florencia Garcia, a native of Vegan. During his early teenage years, he studied at the Colegio de San Juan de Letran and later went to the University of Santo Tomas, receiving a Bachelor of Philosophy in 1855, Bachelor of Theology in 1859, Licentiate in the Philosophy in 1860, Licentiate in Theology in 1862, Doctor of Theology and Doctor of Canon Law in 1868. So, makonsider gid nga si Jose Apolonio Burgos y Garcia is the smartest one. And for having the highest degree nga kasaka na mo sang degree nga pinang take ya. And also si Jose Burgos is naging part sang accusation nga naging dahilan nga ma-execute sa. And the last one is Jacinto Zamora y del Rosario. Was born on August 14, 1835 in Pandacan, Manila. His parents were Venancio Zamora and Hilario del Rosario. He studied at the Colegio de San Juan de Letran and graduated with a degree of Bachelor of Arts. He later transferred to the University of Santo Tomas and obtained a degree of Bachelor of Canon and Civil Laws. He prepared for the priesthood in the Seminary of Manila. He had dreamed of becoming a priest at a young age. So, si Zamora naman niya is, ang habit niya is playing cards. So, may nakita ang Espanyol nga invitation nga naging dahilan nga dakpon sa, which is ang nakabutang sa invitation is inviting a friend, powder and munitions nga bali it's all about gambling and money. But then sa pagitsindi sang Espanyol sa mga Spanish is all about ng invitation to a group for nga amo naging accusations of pag-aaklas. So amo na ang naging ebidensya sang Spanish nga idakpon sa kag i-execute man sa upod sa duwa man kapari. So ang tatlo ni kapari, which is the Gomborsa, ang naging inspirasyon ni Rizal nga maubraya ang part 2 yang novel nga ang title is El Filibusterismo. So, kabalo naman ta nga ang content sang El Filibusterismo is all about revenge, no? Which is si Don Crisostomo Ibarra ay nagbalik pero naging si Simon, no? Nga ang mag-revenge sa pangkat sang Espanyol nga ipaglaban ang aton nga kasarinlan bilang Pilipino. So, though may connection sa Cavite Mutiny nga nag-alsa man ang Pilipino for revolution to makamit nato ng ginatawag nga kalayaan para sa ating bayan. So, naging inspirasyon ni Rizal ang tatlo kapari. Si Rizal is nasaksihan niya ni ang panghitabo sang tatlo ni kapari, which is that time si Rizal is 10 years old pa lang. So si Rizal is sang amo pa lang na niya nga edad, dream niya na maging pare, no? Nga magdako sa gusto niya maging pare. But then, sang nasaksihan niya niyang panghitabo nga hindi equal ang pagtrato sa mga Espanyol sa mga Pilipino. So, dire nabukas ang isipan ni Rizal nga ma-widen pag ang iya nga pananaw sa palibot nga kung ano ang dapat kag kung ano ang pwede niya maobra sa pagmalatrato ng mga Espanyol sa aton. So si Rizal hindi ta magid siya makonsider nga nga hero gamit ang dahas, but then si Rizal is naging hero ta dahilan sa iyang matilinhagang kaisipan, no? Or sa malawak nga pag-iisip amo na sa mga ideya napukaw man ang kaisipan ng mga kapwa Pilipino nga ay amo ni gali ginatapak-tapakan na ta sa mga Spanish, why not dapat ipaglaban ta ang sariling bayan ta ni dapat hindi ta magpaapi-api sila. So amo na si Rizal ay naging daan din ang naging isang bayani nga naging dahilan nga mabugtaw ang kapwa Pilipino nga mag-revolution.
Pangaral discussed earlier about the Spanish perspective of Cavite Mutiny. In this moment, I'm going to discuss the Filipino version of the incident. But first, what is mutiny? A mutiny is a refusal of people, usually soldiers or sailors, to continue obeying a person in authority. So in Tagalog, mutiny means himagsikan. Who is Dr. Trinidad Hermenegildo Pardo de Tavera? A Filipino scholar and researcher, wrote the Filipino version of the bloody incident in Cavite. He was a Filipino historian, physician, and politician who wrote about many aspects of the Filipino culture. In his point of view, the incident was a mere mutiny by the native Filipino soldiers and laborers of the Cavite arsenal who turned out to be dissatisfied with the abolition of their privileges. Indirectly, Tavera blamed Governor Izquierdo's cold-blooded policies, such as the abolition of privileges of the workers and native army members of the arsenal and the prohibition of the founding of School of Arts and Trades for the Filipinos, which the general believed was a cover-up for the organization of a political club. So, according kay Tavera, ang pinaka-main reason sa Cavite Mutiny is wala nagustuhan sa mga Filipino ang pagkuha sa ilang privileges bilang manggagawa o workers sa Cavite Arsenal. When we say arsenal, amo ni ang paggawaan sang kanyon, bala, kag sa mga baril. May mga personal benefits like tax, kag hindi nila need mag-obra or free sila sa polo e servisyo, but it was removed during the time of Rafael Izquierdo. On January 20, 1872, about 200 men comprised of soldiers, laborers of the arsenal, and residents of Cavite, headed by Sergeant Lamadrid, rose in arms and assassinated the commanding officer and Spanish officers in sight. The insurgents were expecting support from the bulk of the army. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. The news about the mutiny reached authorities in Manila, and General Izquierdo immediately ordered the reinforcement of Spanish troops in Cavite. After 2 days, the mutiny was officially declared subdued. So ginapamunuan ni Sergeant Lamadrid na patyo ng mga leaders kang mga opisyal sa mga Espanyol. So ang chisme sa pag-aaklas nabalan sa mga awtoridad sa Manila kag dayon nagdemand si Izquierdo na patibayin pa ang mga hukbong Espanyol sa Cavite. Tavera believed that the Spanish friars and Izquierdo used the Cavite Mutiny as the powerful lever by magnifying it as a full-blown conspiracy involving not only the native army but also included residents of Cavite and Manila, and more importantly, the native clergy to overthrow the Spanish government in the Philippines. Ginapatihan naging gamit ng sa mga paraling Espanyol ni Izquierdo ang pag-aaklas sa Cavite para mapalagana pa ang gobyerno sa mga Espanyol sa Pilipinas.
The central government in Madrid announced its intention to deprive the friars of all the powers of intervention in matters of civil government and the direction and management of educational institutions. This turnout of events was believed by Tavera, prompted the friars to do something drastic in their dire desire to maintain power in the Philippines. Intensyon sang central government in Madrid na kwaon ang power sa mga praile na mangialam pa sa civil government and the direction and management of educational institutions nga gaudyok pagyud na maghimo sa mga marahas na paagi para ma-maintain lang nila ang power sa Pilipinas. Meanwhile, in the intention of stalling reforms, the central government of Spain welcomed an educational decree authored by Sigismondo Moret promoted the fusion of sectarian schools run by the friars into a school called Philippine Institute. The decree proposed to improve the standard of education in the Philippines by requiring teaching positions in such schools to be filled by competitive examinations. This improvement was warmly received by most Filipinos in spite of the native clergy's of secularization. The friars, fearing that their influence in the Philippines would be a thing of the past, took advantage of the incident and presented it to the Spanish government as a vast conspiracy organized throughout the archipelago with the object of destroying Spanish sovereignty. Tavera study confirmed that the Madrid government came to believe that the scheme was true without any attempt to investigate the real facts or extent of the alleged revolution reported by Izquierdo and the friars. So, ang mga parley nga nahadlok na madula ila impluwensya sa Pilipinas is they took advantage sa mga nagalatabo kag ginlapta sa Spanish government ang pagsasabuatan sa mga tawo na gubo ng Spanish sovereignty na ginpatihan dayon sa mga Espanyol. Convicted educated men who participated in the mutiny were sentenced life imprisonment, while members of the native clergy headed by the Gomburza were tried and executed by garrote. So, ang mga tawo nga gaplano wasakon ang gobyerno sa mga Espanyol, gindakop kag ginpatay or gin-execute. Kag isa na da ang tatlong paring martir na kilala sa tawag na Gomburza. This episode leads to the awakening of nationalism and eventually to the outbreak of the Philippine Revolution of 1896. The French writer Edmond Plauchut's account complemented Tavera's account by confirming that the event happened due to discontentment of the arsenal workers and soldiers in Cavite Fort. The Frenchman, however, dwelt more on the execution of the three martyr priests which he actually witnessed.
Unrevealing the truth. Considering the four accounts of the 1872 mutiny, there were some basic facts that remained to be unvarying. First one is there was dissatisfaction among the workers of the arsenal as well as the members of the native army after their privileges were drawn back by General Izquierdo. General Izquierdo removed the privileges of the personal workers and military workers, such as non-payment attributes and exemption from forced labor, and it was the main reason of the evolution. Number 2. General Izquierdo introduced rigid and strict policies that made the Filipinos move and turn away from Spanish government out of disgust. Dr. Tavera described General Izquierdo policies as cold-blooded. The policies of General Izquierdo is to abolition or removing the privileges of the arsenal workers and the military workers and prohibition of funding of schools of arts and trades for the Filipinos, which General Izquierdo believed that it will be a cover-up for the organization of public club. Number 3, the central government failed to conduct an investigation on what really transpired but relied on reports of Izquierdo and the friars and the opinions of the public. Number 4, the happy days of the friars were already numbered in 1872 when the central government in Spain decided to deprive them of the power to intervene in government affairs as well as in the direction and management of schools, prompting them to commit frantic moves to extend their stay in power. Number 5. The Filipino clergy members actively participated in the secularization movement in order to allow Filipino priests to take hold of the parishes in the country, making them prey to the rage of the friars. Do we believe that Cavite Mutiny may have prevented if reporting had been more accurate and truthful? False information is intended to cause disorganization, conflict, and eventually death, as we have seen with the Cavite Mutiny. It seems clear that the insurrection was inspired and prepared by the native clergy, by mestizos and native lawyers, and by those who are known here as abogadillos. The instigators to carry out the criminal project protested against this justice of the peace. However, this does not mean that people won't be killed. 6. Filipino during the time were active participants and responded to what they deemed as injustice. 7. The execution of Gomborsa was a blunder on the part of the Spanish government, for the action severed the ill feelings of the Filipinos, and the event inspired Filipino patriots to call for reforms and eventually independence. There may be different versions of the event, but one thing is certain. The 1872 Cavite Mutiny paved way for a momentous 1898. The road to independence was rough and tough to toddle. Many patriots, named and unnamed, shed their bloods to attain reforms and achieve independence. 12 June 1898 may be a glorious event for us, but we should not forget that before we came across the victory, our forefathers suffered enough. As we enjoy our freedom, may we be more historically aware of our past to have a better future ahead of us. And just like what Elias said in Noli Me Tangere, may we not forget those who fell during the night. And that would be all. Thank you.